No worries.
Good morning. This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it's time for Avoid the Maze. And Avoid the Maze is about a journey, and we're all on a journey from the time we take that first breath until the time we take our last breath. But even then, our journey continues because we leave a trail of memories along the way. My guest today is Jim White, and Jim is from the neighboring state of Indiana, and I'm from Ohio. So it's like we're brother sister states
There
today.
you go.
Okay. And Jim, tell us a little bit about, you know, what has your journey been like? Like, where did you start out in? Is this where you plan to be? Or did you have other goals in mind?
Yeah, that's we all have different goals, when you're growing up. In my work that I do is a lot around family enrichment. So I'll focus a little bit on my family journey. So
Sure.
my wife and I actually met when we were 15 years old. We were in high school and started dating back then. And at that point, we really, you think about, well, what you're going to have kids and all that. We didn't really have a whole lot of thought about that, but we get married, we have our first child, then we have a second child, and we continued, and we ended up with 6 children.
Wow.
um, so we have a fairly large family by today's standards, for sure. And it's interesting that you mentioned the idea of a journey, because in part of my practice and when I work with people, I like to reference the idea of a hero's 2 journeys. And I don't know if you're familiar with that
Yeah.
idea. It's a storytelling technique. And actually, if you look at my hat, the H2J stands for Heroes 2 Journeys. And I stumbled across this, I don't know, several years ago now. But the premise is that, think about a great movie or a great story. The storytelling technique is that the hero or the main character is on 2 different journeys. The first journey is known as the journey of accomplishment. They have some task that they're trying to accomplish, or a goal, or they're physically on a journey to go from, point A to point B. And it's entertaining, but what makes the hero compelling is the second journey. And that second journey is known as the journey of fulfillment. And if you think about what happens is, as they're pursuing that outside goal or task, they're also experiencing this internal transformation. They're discovering new principles, values, beliefs, things that just make their life work better.
Right.
And that's again what makes the story compelling. And when I first learned of this, I thought, that's interesting, because we all are on these 2 separate journeys. And when I think about my life as a husband and a father, it's very clear that I had a lot of outside goals to accomplish. I mean, we had meals to cook, homework to help with, places to be. I mean, there was a lot of tasks to accomplish. And we had obstacles along the way, just like any good story. We
Sure.
had everything from a bad grade on a test to a learning disability, from teaching the kids to ride bikes to learning to drive a car. And as you can imagine, with our marriage, we had our share of obstacles along the way. I like to say that we had 3 distinct hurricanes throughout our marriage, because we've been married now for 42 years, so it's a long time.
Sure.
And so we had all these obstacles. But what's interesting is, early on, I developed this interest in personal development, being a better parent. And through that passion, if you will, I was also going through this journey of fulfillment. I was discovering new principles, values, and beliefs that just made our family work better. And where I find myself now is that I'm at a point in my life where I feel like I'm being called to just share some of that wisdom, share some of the lessons learned over the years. And so that's what sort of drove me to form the Family Enrichment Academy, which is, the whole purpose and mission is to share these lessons that I've gained. But we all are on this journey. And interesting part of what I try to share with parents is, a lot of times we focus on the outside journey, that first one of goals. And I always encourage them, really the first priority should be the journey of fulfillment. You need to, focus on how are you growing and developing from that perspective first, and that then creates the environment for the other things to happen. And a lot of times we don't do it in that order, and so it's a matter of that journey of fulfillment, how you move yourself along that one.
You know, it's interesting as I'm listening to you, and you talking about your children, you know, in general. I have two sons, both from different marriages, and 15 years apart. So
Okay.
it was a whole start over as far as our life was. But my youngest, who is now 32, um, everything, you know, talking about a journey when we had him, we were excited. It was like this was our prize in our marriage. Um, and for the first 6 years, everything, even with the downs, everything still felt perfect. Um, and one day we were given a blow. We were told that he was on the autism spectrum. And this was in the early 90s before anybody really even
Oh,
understood.
yeah. Right.
And we felt like our world had fallen apart. But somehow my husband and I, we saw we're on a new journey. We're going
Right.
to learn, we're going to do this. And he's no different today than he was yesterday. And yesterday, he was an active, smart, young first grader doing everything he was supposed to do. And that's how we projected our future with him. But we didn't see what you're talking about, all those little achievements over the years. And in the past year, all of a sudden, we've now looked back and said, wow, if we could have celebrated those,
Yeah.
do you know how much smoother the journey would be?
Right. It's an interesting when you make that shift and make the journey of fulfillment the first priority. What happens is those circumstances that pop up, you see them as happening for you, not to you. And it's happening to help you move along your journey of fulfillment. And that's it's different, that's a different journey. And in the way I like to describe it to parents, in my mind, and what I share is that we have these two competing mindsets that reside within all of us. And one of them is fear based, and one of them is love based. And the journey of fulfillment, simply stated, is learning to respond and engage with the world from a love based mindset more often than not. And if you think about it's like a continuum, and if I do it, 4 times out of 10, the goal is to get to 5 times out of 10, and then to
Sure.
get to 6 times out of 10. And so you're always growing and developing and learning to be more, to respond out of love more often. In all of these circumstances, they just put you in situations to practice that, right? When you find out your son's on that autism, that scale, it's okay, that's a challenge, if you will, and it could push you into being more fear-based and responding out of fear. And then it's like, okay, but this is an opportunity for me to grow and be more grounded in love. And it's just presenting you with an opportunity for that growth. And so whatever it is that happens, you lose a job, or you go through a divorce, or you lose a parent, all of these things happen along your journey, but they're really just there to help you and to provide that next step for you to learn and grow and be able to engage from that love-based mindset. And so that's the journey. And and we tend to think of these outside things as affecting our internal state, when really it's the other way around. These outside things happen for us to learn to be intentional. That's another key word, is we have to be intentional about how we engage and be aware of where we are. So it really can have a huge impact for people when they start to shift that perspective.
So it's not about us walking around being, Mary Sunshine or Jim Sunshine. It's about being real about it. Um, you know, Social media has taken some of us down this path that, oh, my life is terrible because look what everybody else is doing.
Right.
Um, And in the beginning, when I got on social media, I have to admit, that's where my brain went until I realized, wait a second, I know this person. And last Sunday, they did not have the most wonderful day of their life. Um, and that's when I started saying to myself, it's time to share reality, but share it with a little bit of sunshine. You know, I may have a migraine today, but you know what? I'm not going to have a migraine forever.
Right.
And looking at it that way, you can slowly get yourself into that field of sunshine, even when it's cloudy like it is today here
Right.
in Cleveland.
And it's an inside out process. A lot of times people view it as things happening to them that create how they feel in their state, if you will, but it's really an inside out process. And you have an opportunity to choose, how you're going to engage with the world. And my experience is the more often you choose to engage from a loving perspective, the better things work out and the better you feel. And where ultimately it leads, I like to talk to families about peace, joy, and purpose. If the goal is to experience peace, joy, and purpose, the more you engage from love, the closer you are going to be to that experience. And so that's the goal, or the end game of the journey of fulfillment. That's the end game, right? The journey of accomplishment, it may be getting a new job or whatever, but it's a different goal. And in order to get there, again, it's how often do you engage from a love-based perspective is the key.
So, how do families find you? I mean, you know, when I looked at the information, it was like family enrichment. Um, do I have to belong to a specific group to become part of you, or are you available for anyone or any family member?
So what I do with my practice, first of all, I do, I've written a book, for example. So that's one way to get it, to communicate a message is through written stuff. And I publish a blog. Um, I do YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. So that stuff's available to folks to engage with. I do one-on-one coaching, and I think you mentioned you do some of that as
Right.
well, and most of that is around parenting. It's engaging with parents and helping them to make that shift to being more love-based. And that's really the center of what I work with them on, so that they engage with their child from more of a loving perspective. And just to share a couple of the fundamentals that we end up then focusing on are the ideas of building connection. Is how do I deepen and enrich that connection with the child? And then secondly, taking on more of a mindset of empowerment. How do I empower my child to be their absolute best, whether they're 8 or 9 or they're 18? Because the ultimate goal is you want that child to be able to go off on their own and for them to experience peace, joy, and purpose. I mean, that's ultimately where you want to get them. And so it's a matter of, how do we empower them to get to that place? And a simple example is I'll encourage parents to stop fixing their children's problems, because that's what us parents will tend to run in and want to rescue the child, right? There's an issue and we want to go in and rescue them. But if you look at it from the standpoint of that second journey, that situation or circumstance, whatever it is an opportunity for that child to grow and learn as well. And so it's a matter of how do I move them along their journey from an empowerment standpoint. So anyway, so I do a lot of one-on-one coaching. I do workshops. In a couple of weeks, I'm doing I'm part of a parenting conference, and I'll be a speaker there, and so I do that type of work as well. So I speak, and whether it's a parenting conference or a PTA association, whatever it might be, I'll come and do work there. And then the next is online courses. That's sort of the next evolution, is some online materials that people can consume. So I view it as like an education and coaching type practice. And so that's how I engage with people.
Absolutely. So before you met your wife, and you've been together, like you said, a long time, you met when you were 15 years old, and most of us at 15 years old don't even know what pair of shoes we want to put on that day. So
Right.
congratulations to the two of you. My husband and I have been together 39 years, but we met later in life. Um, but when you were 5, 10, maybe even 14 years old, where did you think your journey was going? Or where did you want it to go?
It's interesting because you mentioned when we started the idea of, a lot of young boys, they dream of being a fireman or an astronaut or all that. Well, mine was around athletics. I was going to be a professional football player. I was going, and the other one I really loved was golf. And so it was, going to be a golfer. And so that was sort of when I was a child, that was what my dreams were, is being a professional athlete. Because that's what kids have these
Sure.
dreams, and they look towards those types of things. But that was where I was heading. An interesting little side story: I chose to go to a different high school than where all my friends were going, because I was going to have an opportunity to play football there that I wouldn't have had at the high school where all my friends were going. And the twist is I end up there, and that's where I meet my wife. Right. And so you choose for that reason, and then you get, but so if you believe in divine intervention,
Right.
maybe I was being guided there a little bit, to start this journey that we're on. Because it was, just a few weeks into, as a student, the new kid at that high school is when I met my wife, my future wife. So
Interesting. Now, did you ever play football?
I did. I played there. So, I was able to play there. And then, as it happens, it doesn't go beyond that. I wasn't able to go any further, but I had gotten to where I guess I needed to be, which was, to meet her. So, it's just part of that journey. And it's funny as you look back on how, in decisions you make to go one way or the other, how they can impact you a little bit.
Well, that's why that fork in the road is there. It's there for a reason.
Yeah.
Um, and, you know, myself, when I was growing up, my parents wanted us to be decisive. So that meant making a mistake. Well, you better own up to it, first of all, if you make a mistake, but you should be decisive enough to not make mistakes. And so I was always afraid. I was always looking behind my back. Oh my God, I'm going to make a mistake. Um, Problem is, I didn't understand what my parents were trying to tell me. And the point, what they were trying to tell me was, it's okay if you make them, but learn from them
Learn
and
from.
own up to them.
Right.
And when I finally got their message, it was like I had already been married. I had gone through a divorce, and I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, whoa, this wasn't the path I had. My path was, I was going to get married. I was going to have kids. I was going to live down the street from my parents. I was going to have, Sunday dinners with them. And then I looked at myself and I said, whoa, that was 9-year-old Karen. That's
Right.
not who I want to be. And that's why I'm in the situation I'm in right now, because I never took the time to figure out who I wanted to be. And I won't say it happened overnight, because it took a long time. In fact, it took my current husband, who I've been with now for 39 years, to be that loving partner to say to me, you can be whoever you want. And as you grow and as you change, I'm still going to love you, because there's something about you that's never going to change. And that's what gave me the courage to do what I do today.
Right.
That, it's okay if we've made a mistake. It's okay if our life isn't perfect. It's okay if somebody walks into the house, and I will admit my studio is haphazard, where the rest of my house is in perfect condition. I just can't keep my studio that way.
Yeah.
So you know what? When people come over, the studio door is closed. But I shouldn't be afraid to show the havoc that I have in here. And that's
Right.
what I want people to understand. I think that's what you're trying to tell parents, that it's okay to have, things that aren't perfect with your kids, but show them how they can make it better.
Right. And there's a couple of things there I would follow up with. One, you talking about it's okay to you're going to make quote unquote mistakes. And when I tell people, and when I talk to parents, yeah, it's the premise that if you engage out of fear, for example, the way that comes out is maybe you yell at your child, or you do something that that disconnects or damages the connection. But part of my point to them is that love always heals. It has this amazing ability to heal things. And so you can never damage the relationship to the point that it can't be healed. And so there's always that hope out there, or that gives you that hope and belief. So that's an important piece. Another thing I would mention from what you were describing is there are two kind of core fundamental beliefs that I share as part of what really sort of drives the Family Enrichment Academy. And the first one is that everyone deserves to be seen for who they are and loved unconditionally. And if that, one of the fundamentals I mentioned, the idea of building connection, that's the underlying goal that you're trying to accomplish with the child. You want that child to feel like they're being seen and that they're loved unconditionally. And that just creates such a foundation for them then to go out into the world. Because if they go out into the world, and well, two things. One is it gives them a frame of reference. If somebody is not treating them in a loving manner, they're going to be able to compare that to home and say, wait a minute, one of these things doesn't feel right to me. And so you create that frame of reference, but it also it creates a safe place for them. They go, they engage, it's not good, they're comfortable pulling away. Sometimes kids won't pull away because they don't want to be alone. They don't want to be left out. They want to feel like they don't fit. But if they can say, you know what, I'm going to turn around and go back home because home is that safe place, it gives them the power, if you will, that internal self-image that allows them to do that. So that's one of the fundamentals. And then the second one is we all deserve to be empowered to be our absolute best, which was part of what you were talking about. And that's what your husband has sort of empowered you to be your absolute best. And as a parent, it makes sense that we should be the one that's empowering our children to be their absolute best. And so that's that second component that's just critical to the parenting process. And again, if you make a mistake, that's why it's a journey, and it never ends. Like I have adult children now. I have grandchildren now. I'm still a parent. I will always be that parent.
Absolutely.
And so this is a forever game. It's not like you're a parent until they're 18 and leave and then you're done. I mean, it goes on forever. And so it's adopting that mindset. And with every circumstance, there's an opportunity for me to grow. And then the other piece is there's an opportunity for the children to grow. And it's not just about accomplishing the goal. Take a school, it's not about getting the better grade in math. It's about how do I become a better person as I get that better grade in math. So and again, I really encourage parents to focus first on how do they become a better person. And then getting the better grade in math or whatever becomes the second priority. And that's how I encourage parents to engage.
I love that. For many years we were told by people who really weren't close to us, but thought they were observing, that my husband and I were enabling our son. And I kept saying to my husband, we're not. We're giving him tools. We are pulling him back every once in a while saying, here's a tool that you could use. And maybe he wasn't ready to. But the interesting part is that a year ago, he took this job 1,000 miles away from us, got in his car, drove the distance. A couple times he had little hiccups and he called and said, okay, what do I do? And my first reaction was, well, that's normal. Anybody would do that. I would do that. Okay. Right. And he has settled in, and he now is looking back at the past year saying, these are some of the things I wish I had done differently, but you know what? I can do them differently going forward. And I'm seeing that all the things that we didn't think he was responding to in his teens, in his early 20s, he was.
Yeah.
He was waiting for the right time to use them. And as you said, we're always a parent. Absolutely. He'll call me 1,000 miles away. And this was the first week he was living in the great state of Texas. And he heard sirens in the middle of the night. So who does he call 1,000 miles away? He calls mom and he goes,
What's going
I
on?
think these are tornado sirens. He said, I don't even know where to go to take shelter. And he found an inner closet and he sat in there for 3.5 hours where the sirens went on. But then the next day, he went downstairs and he saw that there was an area in his apartment complex
For
shelter.
people to go, right?
But it was like, hey, fear said, where is my safe spot? And he knew his safe spot was calling home. And I see nothing wrong with it, because I will tell you, my mother lived to 96 and a half years old. And up until she passed away, I cannot tell you how many times I called her
Right.
for advice or security.
Right.
So
And it's that place again where you can go that you're seen and you're loved unconditionally. It's a home. It feels like that. And that's critical for all of us to have. And again, in my eyes, the family is the most natural place for that to happen. Now it doesn't, unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't happen that way. And you can find that in other places, but the family seems to be the most natural, which is why a lot of my focus is around the family
I
and
love that.
those family and relationships.
So you mentioned you have 6 kids and you've got grandkids.
Right.
So what is it like when you all get together? I mean,
Yeah.
your dad and your grandpa, but do you take that dad feeling for everybody?
It's interesting. It's interesting that you asked that, because I have 13 grandchildren, first of all, so it's a lot.
That is a lot.
And 3 of my children and 7 of the grandchildren do not live local, and 6 of the grandchildren and 3 of the children do live local to me. And just literally this last weekend, we had everybody here in town for the first time together in a couple of years. And we had 13 extra people sleeping in our home as a result of that. And of which 7 of them were the out of town grandchildren, right? And
Right.
then we had the out of town kids and spouses and what have you. So it's a timely question from that standpoint. So and it's interesting. You think about the 2 different journeys. There's the first, it's chaos, right? There's just a lot going on. There's just stuff to do but then at the same time, there's that opportunity to build connection and to be together. And there is definitely a distinction between my role as a father and my role as a grandfather. And and I will, and intentionally, if it comes to I'll call it a decision, like one of the kids will come up to me and say, hey, can I have a piece of candy? I'm not going to make that. I defer that to their parent, right? And that's
Sure.
part of my role as a grandfather. I'm not going to make that decision. That's just, but at the same time, I'm still a father to the kids. And again, these are adult children. So that relationship is different now. And it's interesting. They'll come for advice, but a lot of times it's just, it's like, how your child always wants the parent to be proud of them,
Right.
and they always want to be connected. It's a lot of that. And it's around a lot of times their children. It's they want to share the victories, if you will, of their children, what they've done and accomplished. And it's just, it's an amazing experience. I'll share one quick story.
Sure.
One of those that kind of touches your heart. Remember, we talked about what makes the journey, the story compelling, is that second journey, that journey of fulfillment. And part of that is around, an extension, acting from a love-based mindset and being compassionate and being thoughtful and all of those things. So we have all of the grandchildren here at the house. And one of my daughters actually has 6 children, is herself. And her youngest is, what is she now? It's like 14, 15 months, but she's at that stranger danger stage. She doesn't like going to anybody that she doesn't know, right? Well, what we were doing was pizza and a movie night for all the grandkids. So all of the grandkids are downstairs watching this movie. Well, the youngest child, it's time for her to go to bed. And so her oldest sibling, which is the oldest of the the girl cousins takes her upstairs because she won't even come to myself or my wife because she's got that thing, and she's one of the out of town grandkids, so we don't
Sure.
see her all the time. And so her older sibling takes her upstairs and is basically putting her to bed. One of the other cousins, different, it's a different, my son's son, comes to my wife, and this is where you hear that inside journey happening. He says to my wife, he says, you know what? I've seen this movie 3 times already. How about if I go upstairs and I'll take care of the baby so that my girl cousin can come down and join everybody and
Oh,
watch the movie? So he was offering to take her place in effect, which is just an example of him being compassionate and him seeing other people and being having that servant's heart kind of a thing, that's what we want, right? That's really, that's even those moments make you prouder than just the fact that they got a good grade on a test or they accomplished
absolutely.
something, and that's what brings a little tear to your eye. But so then you say, okay, and he's 10 years old, so he's not, he's young, but he that's an example of how do we move them along that kind of a path so that they have that's the way they engage with the world. So just an interesting little dynamic that came out as they were all together. But back to your original question, there is differences in those roles as a grandparent and as a father. It's definitely, there's a distinction there.
Well, and the main reason I asked that, my mother always believed that she was the mother. And I remember my niece saying to her, I'm the mother of these 2 children. And if I say they can have a cookie, they can have a cookie. And my mother looked at her and she said, I'm always going to be the mother. And with that, we all just looked at her and we said, you know what? It's not worth fighting. Okay. And, she would go and give the little ones cookies and things.
Right.
And so, yet I don't have grandchildren, but one of the things that I learned from my mom is that there is a distinction. And I love to hear that from you because you've done your parenting and you're still parenting to some degree.
Right.
But now it's their turn and their choices to make. And they've learned from one of the best. So, hey, they should be doing good.
And it's interesting, when I work with parents with teenagers, and this extends up into the adulthood, one of the things I tell them to stop doing, this is something you need to stop doing, and that is giving unsolicited advice. And there'll be a time for your advice if they ask for it. But if they're not asking, then it's not your job to give it, right? And that's where a lot of conflict comes up. The parent, and especially with an adult children, they come in and they start trying to advise and control what's going on when really it's up to the child at that point. And you have to kind of turn over that control. And then if they ask for your advice, which they do, so that's when I do get to engage, is they will come and say, what do you think? Or, what would you do? That'll come up, but I can't just give it unsolicited.
Yeah. My husband had to learn that the hard way with our son. Up until he moved, it was like, I've heard that story before. I already know that. But once he moved and they weren't engaging on a daily basis,
it became
now
easier.
it's, he'll call Dad and say, hey, I just got my oil changed, but there's a weird sound going on. What do you think? And my husband will say, well, I think you already figured it out. What do you think? So my husband engages differently as well. It's not like he's automatically going, oh, take it back there. They did a rotten job. So we all have a lot to learn, and it's
and it's never ending. We're never going to get it fully there. And again, it's the pursuit, in my mind, it's that pursuit of engaging from a love-based perspective. And things happen that create that fear in us, and have us respond more from that fearful place. And it's an ongoing never ending process.
Absolutely. So, how can our listeners find you if they want more information or if they want to engage with you?
Sure. It's familyenrichmentacademy.com is the website. That's the best place to connect. There's a contact page there. You can shoot me an email. My email is Jim, my first name, at familyenrichmentacademy.com. So those are really the best places to connect.
Well, we'll make sure that's all in the show notes. And I'm so glad you had an opportunity to have the whole clan together. That is
Yep.
absolutely wonderful.
And if people are interested, we were able to get family pictures, which we had, it's hard to get everybody. So
Right.
it's like 25 people all total when you count everybody. And so I have a couple of the whole family pictures on the website. So if people are curious of what
Wonderful.
it looks like to have 13 grandchildren running around.
I
And I should say the oldest is 12. So they're all little.
They're all little.
Yeah, a lot of little ones. So, but it's it's a lot of fun, and we enjoy it. And it's something that we've chosen, obviously, and it's we find a lot of joy with it. So,
Well, we want to wish you and your wife many, many more wonderful years together. God, being together since 15, I don't even remember if I had a boyfriend when I was 15.
yeah,
Doesn't matter at this point. I'm with the love of my life. He's my best friend. And you know what? That's the best way to take this journey.
absolutely.
Want to thank you for joining us, Jim, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Been my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye now.
Bye.